This is the Office Manager Diaries, a podcast all about the highs and the lows of professionals in office management around the world. We'll delve into their career journeys and diaries where they'll share their stories, tips for success, and only things office managers understand. Enjoy, and please remember to give us a follow. Hi everybody, it's Hannah Gray back with another episode this week of the Office Manager Diaries, and I'm delighted to be joined by Caroline Rees Williams, who is the Operations Manager at Valesco Group. Hi there, Caroline.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Honestly, I absolutely love doing these, and I know every week I say I'm excited and it's my pleasure, but it really is. I truly mean that. So thank you for sharing some of your time with us on the Office Manager Diaries today. Let's kick off. If you can just firstly tell me how you got into office management and a little bit more about your role now as the Operations Manager.
In terms of how I got into office management, I think it's possibly what quite a few other people say. I stumbled into it by accident. So I left school and I went to Birmingham University and I did economics. Admittedly, just because my big brother did it, and I thought, why not? It should open some doors. So I survived that, and I left uni. And you have that summer where you're still you're back at home and you're wondering what to do. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew what I didn't want to do. Having done economics, I knew I didn't want to go to one of the big four. I don't know why I felt so passionately about that, at 21 years old, but I did. I knew I didn't want to be, one of 500 people working ridiculous hours at 21 years old on a grad scheme. So I was having this conversation with my parents, and my mum just said, why not get a very junior office job? You're very organized. My mum's been in admin roles her entire career, and she said, it comes very naturally to you. It doesn't have to be what you do for the rest of your life, but just to get a foot in the door, get some office experience, and also just get some money in. So that's where I went to my first very junior office administrative role. It was for a company off of Bond Street in London, and it was very basic, shredding, printing, filing, everything that bit mundane, but it's what you have to do to kind of get your foot in the door. And I was there for about a year, again, not thinking that I would stay there. And then where I think the office management piece really started to come to light for me is my next role was at a headhunting company in Chancery Lane, and it was a dual role. So it was half EA to one of the managing partners, but it was half project coordinator. So it's an administrative role, but you're project coordinating basically these searches. So whether it's scheduling all of the interviews, it's going through the CVs, formatting the documents, the candidate report, joining update calls, taking notes, etc. And it just opened my eyes. I think I wasn't conscious of it, but it opened my eyes to the fact that you can have this dual element of a role. You don't just have to be the assistant. There's always this other piece. And so in the London office, I think there were 4 or 5 project coordinators, as well as our front of house coordinator. And kind of between us all, we picked up the office management bits. There wasn't one of us that was designated office manager, but I just really liked the variety that it gave me. So I was there for nearly 4 years. And so after I left there, I went into a dedicated EA office manager role. And that's really where I knew this is what I wanted to do. And I wanted to go down the operations route rather than going down the assistant one. I like keeping the combination of the two, but if you had to hold a gun to my head and say which do you prefer of the two, it's going to be the office manager piece. And so it kind of it went from there. And then I was at that company for just over a year, and then the pandemic hit. And then for the last almost 3 years now, next week is my 3-year anniversary at Valesco. So I joined Valesco pretty much at the start of the pandemic, interviewed via Zoom, hadn't met my CEO until probably a month or 2 after I actually got the role. And it just all fell into place. So Valesco is a real estate investment and asset management company, which is, in simple terms, and for those of us who aren't in the investment or asset management teams, we buy, manage, and then sell real estate around the world. We currently have 5 office buildings around the world, and we have reached an AUM to assets under management of 2.5 billion euros. It also, I think what it ticked for me as well was I hadn't used my economics degree up until this point. It dawned on me that what's the point of going to university and having done such a difficult degree and then not actually touching on it? So what I really liked about the Valesco role was it had the dual kind of EA office management piece, but it also allowed me to have a little bit of finance, even though I'm still not in the investment team. And then to answer your second question in terms of what I actually do at Valesco, so there are 9 of us. Predominantly, there's our CEO, there's our SLT, and then you can split the guys kind of into the investment and the asset management teams. And then outside of that sits myself as the operations manager, now operations manager, and then my lovely colleague Antonella, who is our office assistant. And so I basically say, if anyone asks, Antonella and I do everything that isn't the investment and the asset management. So it's all of the office management. It's the meeting and greeting of guests. It's the answering the main line. It's the, stocking the stationery cupboard, making sure the kitchen has always got everything they need in it. And then it's also the more complicated bit. So as operations manager, I touch a lot of different verticals. So whether that's kind of social media, HR, I am one of the trustees of our foundation that I helped set up. I basically touch everything that isn't the actual core revenue generating part of the business.
It's like one of the people at the office management show said to me lately when I said to them in my seminar, describe your role or something, and they, or when someone asks what do, you've pretty much summed it up as everything that those guys there don't do, I do.
Yeah. And it's the stuff they don't notice that's done, right? They come in and the office is functioning and they can do their jobs, and that's what's meant to be. But behind the scenes, it's all of the IT. I do all of the internal bookkeeping. I make sure people get paid. I do payroll. I do invoicing. I do everything kind of behind the scenes that means that the guys that actually make the money can come in and do that to the best of their ability.
And that's exactly what our job is, I think, isn't it? To create that environment, to make sure they can get on and do their job, which is make money, support people, give services because it's a charity or whatever else it might be, make a product and therefore sell it and whatever. But yeah, that's absolutely right. And that is our role. So other than what you've mentioned, how else do you support the staff there at Valesco? And are you responsible for any of the overseas offices?
We don't have any overseas offices, so we've just got the one office in the UK. So our 5 offices that we own are around the country, around the world. Sorry, I should say.
Sorry, that's your assets. I see. Sorry.
Yeah. So we've just got the one office here in London, which we moved into in March last year. So we're on Berkeley Square, and I might be biased, but I think it's the most beautiful building on the square. In terms of what else I do to support the team at Valesco, so I'm the EA to our wonderful CEO, Shiraz. I've been since I joined almost 3 years ago. He's actually, in terms of the executive assistant piece, he's pretty self-sufficient. I've been EA to several of his other executives in my career, and he's by far the most hands-off in terms of the EA piece. We work exceptionally close on the operations piece, just by nature of the fact that there's only 9 of us. It means that he's also involved in a lot of the day-to-day operations as well. But in terms of EA, it's quite minimal. Arranging travel, booking, being the soldier and the keeper of his diary, processing the expenses, etc. But on the operations side, as I say, it's pretty much everything. So managing all of the contractors that are needed for the office, so whether that's the cleaners, whether it's our external IT company, who I actually found through the office management group. We've got, the coffee machine that seems to break all the time. I shan't say the make of the coffee machine. We've got one of those fancy...
Yeah, kill my sponsorship opportunities on the pod.
One of those fancy taps that now, I know maybe we might be quite late on this, but we got it when we moved last year, and it's just instant hot water. And now at home, I feel so hard done by when I have to turn a kettle on. I don't have the 3 minutes at this stage.
One of my best friends has got, I can't remember the brand of it, it's the more kind of domestic one. A Kuka, maybe it might be. Anyway, she's got that in her kitchen, and I'm so envious. I know.
If only you could just fix it to can it just dispense G&Ts? That would be amazing. What else do I do? Yeah, so trustee of the foundation. So that's obviously technically a voluntary part of my role. But when I joined, it was Shiraz has always, donated to charity through various verticals in his life. He's an incredibly philanthropic man, but it wasn't official. So when I joined, that was one of the first things he tasked me with, which was registering the Valesco Foundation with the Charities Commission, which was jumping through it. It was a lot of red tape to jump through, especially because, and it's understandable, a charity has to be solely in the interest of public benefit. And where a corporate is linked to that charity, which it has to be because the foundation is run solely on the profits of the company, but where that is the link, the Charities Commission are particularly forensic, shall we say, in terms of the setup of the company, of the charity, sorry. So I did that in 2021, and then ever since I've been one of the trustees, and so I'm solely responsible for the administration of that. So whether that's arranging the meetings, taking the minutes, ensuring the actions are done. I project manage the website. We've now got a separate website, so that it is a separate entity. Organizing visits to our grantees, doing all the bookkeeping. Last year, I had our first annual report, which again is a lot of admin. That was a big task, but I managed to tick off. And it's now, the clock is ticking that the one for 2022 is coming due in a couple of months. So I've got that to look forward to. Other things that I do the internal bookkeeping. So basically, I create and maintain the office management budget alongside our CFO. And through that, it means I also do all of our internal bookkeeping and ensure that everything is paid on time. The last day of every month, I always joke with Antonella. I'm like, Antonella, guess what day it is? Don't talk to me this afternoon. It's bookkeeping day. I do expense management. I go through and I approve everyone's expenses. I do payroll, as I said, that happened this morning. I do absence management. I do all the document control as well in terms of the, storing documentation for HR. Last year, I started using a brilliant online platform called Factorial. Anyone listening, I highly recommend it. It's brilliant in terms of storing all of the documentation for each employee in one place, and you can now get it in one click rather than clicking through, SharePoint, Dropbox, or God forbid, it's all of their contracts are printed on paper in a drawer, like was the case when I joined. I do all of our visas, so certainly post-Brexit, I think a lot of recruitment involves people coming from outside the UK, and often they need to be sponsored. So I handle all of that. When I first did it, we had a solicitor's law firm helping us with it, and it just dawned on me after the first 1 or 2 applications that I think this is something I could do myself. So I'm now in charge of that. I handle our private medical care, our content insurance. The list could go on.
Yeah, it really can. And thank you for being so specific, because I think it's useful when we get people unlike yourself and you go through the role, to people that are listening to really feel the gravity of these roles. Because I often say, I don't think people really understand how many hats that office managers have to do. And like you say, there's probably a dozen to 100 more things that you haven't mentioned there that you're responsible for. So yeah, I love that you've gone into the detail. Can you just tell me a little bit more about the trust there and what exactly it does, or what its aims are?
So the foundation, so there's 13 charitable purposes, which the Charities Commission set, and that's obviously an awful lot of different very worthy causes, but there's a lot to focus on and try and spread yourself amongst. So for 2022 and 23, the trustees and I whittled that down to 4 of focus, shall we say. And so the simplified versions of them are for education, poverty, health and saving lives, and then diversity and inclusion. And since we started deploying grants at the start of 2022, we've tried to split our allocation, 25% across each of those. What you often find is that a lot of the initiatives that are being brought to us, or that we want to be involved in, or that we're match funding for, tick quite a few of the different purposes. And we've been involved in some brilliant initiatives. When we first, 2021, we basically spent establishing processes, putting policies in place, undergoing trustee training, and trying to properly understand, what we were about to undertake. Because, I speak for myself, but I also probably speak for a couple of the other trustees, that it was our first time being a trustee of a charity, and we wanted to do this right from the outset. So we got all of that in place in 2021, and then started 2022 is when we started actually donating and giving grants. And so we found ourselves in a unique position where we had this pot of money very generously donated from the company, but where do you go? What do you do? It would be so easy to just, give thousands of pounds to Cancer Research UK or to Oxfam or to Children in Need, who are all incredibly worthy causes, but we wanted to be very, very specific with our giving. We try to make sure that we donate to organisations that have a yearly revenue of £1 million or less. So it does discount a lot of those bigger names. And we're focused on hand up rather than hand out. We want to actually create lasting systemic change rather than just giving some cash just for the sake of cash. So the first partner that we met with, they were brilliant. They're called the London Community Foundation, and they're a charity in themselves, but they effectively are the middleman between corporate foundations like ours and very worthy but small charitable initiatives in London for the London Community Foundation that would typically fall under the radar. And so we met with them, the lovely Laura from the LCF, and we effectively said, these are our 4 purposes for 2022. This is how much money we can give. Can you give us some ideas? And they went away and they came back and they presented 3 initiatives per purpose. And we just sat around with the table with LCF and the trustees and basically discussed all of them, all took a vote, chose who we were going to donate to for 2022, and it went from there. And so we ended up, so the 4 grantees that we donated to last year were all incredible, and we had the opportunity to meet with 2 of them last year. And the LCF were just brilliant because they handle all of the compliance, which is also something that, you know, we're going into this blind. We don't necessarily know how to do that, how to vet a charitable initiative. They handle all of that for you. They handle the transfer of funds. They help the charities themselves after the grant period, which is typically maybe 6 to 12 months. They help them put together an impact report. So we've got statistics and we've got real life examples as to how we really impacted human lives, which is just such a lovely read. And it just really sounds cheesy, but it makes it worth it. I think, you know, there's a lot of greenwashing going on nowadays. And I think a lot of corporates have, you know, say that they do these charitable things because it's kind of a tick box that people, and especially millennials, kind of are looking out for now when they're applying for jobs. But for Valesco to have so early on in, you know, in its formation, to have committed to not only creating the foundation, but to also donating from our profits, I think says a lot about the company that I work for. And it gives a higher purpose. And I know that sounds cheesy. I'm not trying to skirt away from the fact that, you know, we've all got bills to pay and we all want to make money, and we're in the financial services industry. So I'm not shying away from that, but we work incredibly long hours here. And I think, you know, there are times that, you know, you're sat here at 10 p.m. and you're working on something, but if you remember that the more successful the company is, actually the more successful the foundation is, it's just an added driving force to getting to where we need to be, because we've got a lot of goals as Valesco, but if we hit those goals as Valesco, then Valesco Foundation are going to hit theirs as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love how much you know about it. Clearly, you know, if you were there from grassroots setting it up, you're going to, but how passionate you are, and I assume that passion is felt throughout the company as well. So that's incredible. And you're right, so many people are greenwashing and culture washing and well-being washing and all the different types of washing under the banner of ESG. So it is important to recognize the businesses that actually are making an impact and are making a difference. So there's a whole host of stuff you're responsible there to wrap it up in a really non-succinct way. Stuff is the word I'm going for. But what challenges are you facing at present, Caroline, and how are you resolving those?
I think part and parcel of the role is there's actually going to be some sort of fire to fight on a daily basis, you know, whether that's really minute, like the printer isn't working and you've got to get on your hands and knees and actually, you know, wiggle some cables around and then magically it works, or whether that, you know, it's a lot worse and it's, I don't know, a flight for a really important meeting that one of the executives is going to get cancelled. You're firefighting on a daily basis. But in terms of challenges, I'd say it's finding enough time to do it all. I think, you know, as I've got wonderful Antonella, but between the 2 of us, we're still at capacity. And I think that it's one, because we're a small team and there's a lot to do amongst a small, nimble team, but it's also because I think you're never done as the office manager. I think, you know, just because you can take a project, for example, the coffee machine, and you can tick that off, but what's to say that in a year's time, that's actually not a much better offering, or maybe we don't want that coffee machine anymore because it's actually not very sustainable the way that those, you know, the pods are disposed of. So actually we want to now go to a roasted bean solution. Okay, well now I have to start from step 1 again, and that's a whole new project. And there's also, as the team grows, which our team is growing, there's always going to be a new problem that you need a new solution or a new piece of software, you know, to find. So I think my challenge is bandwidth, and it's finding the time to do everything. And also on the flip of that, knowing when to step away. I think it's quite typical for an office manager's or an EA or anyone within the administrative operations world. I think it's within our personality to be perfectionists, to be people pleasers, and to want to get everything done yesterday. And I think something that I do struggle with is knowing when to step back and when to say, Caroline, it's 11 p.m. I know you could sit here and finish writing that policy, but it can wait until tomorrow. And it's learning to try and detach and to try and prioritize. And I say that term loosely because I think most of what we do is a priority, but it's learning to kind of what's the ultra priority that has to be done that day, and then what can actually wait tomorrow, so you can actually try and switch off. But I'm not the best at that. I mean, even I didn't sleep very well last night. Our CEO was off to Paris this morning, and we changed his train very late last night. And he didn't, the seat available, just, I know it was one that wasn't going to be optional for him. He was completely relaxed about it. He didn't mind, but I mind. Like, I want him to be in the seat that is going to be most conducive to him being able to work properly on that Eurostar. So I was waking up every couple of hours, checking the Eurostar app, trying to change this seat, only to get a lovely message from him this morning saying, Caroline, the seat worked really well, by the way, just so you know.
Oh, no.
Oh no.
Oh my goodness. This is the thing. It never stops. It's like running home, isn't it?
Yeah.
You think, oh my goodness, I've got to pay that bill, or I've got to take this to the post office, or go and get the dry cleaning, or there's all these things personally in our lives that we have to remember to stay on top of. I need to clean my car at the moment, and I keep thinking, should I take it down the road to clean, or should I do it myself? I'll do it myself, but my hose isn't working at the moment. There's some sort of leak with it. So I don't want to do it without the hose because it's a big car and it's a bit of a pain. They're just this life
Yeah.
admin. Bring that into the office and it's so much bigger, and you're paid to do it for, so that guilt, it's like mum guilt is there,
Yeah.
isn't it? Of like, oh my goodness, is he going to be okay on that train to Paris and things? So yeah, and time. Oh my goodness, if we could buy time, hey?
I know.
It's an ever-growing issue for office managers, and we're getting more and more responsibility, I think, as well. So, but also the more accessible you are to your business and the better you are at your job, you're going to find that you're going to be given more responsibility as well. So do be aware of that, people.
Yes, true. There's a tip for you.
Yeah, we're full of them. My tip for this week is all about asking for a pay rise. I recently shared a masterclass of this in June for members of the Office Management Portal who are on our premium membership. And I think it's something that a lot of us fear doing. I think a lot of us put it off, and some of us probably do it but go about it the wrong way. It's really important to prepare, research, evidence, and back yourself when you are going in to ask for a pay rise. Consider the timing in terms of the company. Do they only do pay rises once a year as part of the annual reviews or appraisals? If so, prepare for it then and do it then, because it's highly unlikely that you will get a pay rise outside of those timeframes. It may well be written into your contract that they will only do a salary review and an increase once a year. So do prepare and be aware of all these different timeframes. Sticking with timing for a moment, though, also consider when you're going to approach your manager or whoever you're going to that's appropriate for this, and do consider that as well. Who do you need to have that conversation with without going behind people's backs and without disrespecting the people that are authoritative to you in terms of their roles and the hierarchy there? But consider whoever it is you're having that meeting and that conversation with, their workload and their timing. If they sit in a role where month end is really, really busy and stressful for them, avoid that time frame completely and wait until their workload is back to a normal level where you can give them the time, they can give you the time, and you can have that sensible conversation for them to process it. Otherwise, the chances are your request is going to go to the bottom of the pile and it won't be heard, it won't be responded to, and you're going to have to do some chasing to get that response and potentially have the conversation again. When it comes to research, making sure that you are looking at salary reports, maybe asking people in our network confidentially what they earn and the kind of profession, the kind of sector, sorry, that they sit in, the level, the responsibilities that they have. Go onto job boards and have a look at active roles that are similar to what you're doing and try and learn what sectors they sit in as well, because sector, size and responsibilities will make a difference to what salary you're on in these office management roles. If you're in like a charity or media, we often find they're lower paying. If you are in a financial or insurance, very corporate fintech, investment type institution, you're going to be on the higher end of that salary bracket. So do your research and prepare that evidence so that you can back yourself when you get into the room. Think about how you're going to ask for the meeting. So perhaps say, I'd like to discuss my performance. If you want to give them more of a heads up, so I'd like to discuss my performance and a review of my compensation. But consider how you're going to put that message there. Half an hour, 30-minute meeting is fine. Perhaps you want to do it in one of your regular catch-ups with your manager as well, or as part of that catch up. And then also how you're going to evidence your successes, your achievements that you have accomplished over the last year or however long it's been since you perhaps had your last salary increase. Put some really succinct, clear bullets so that when you get into the meeting, you can either share that maybe in like a Canva, PowerPoint, Google Slides format that's really nice and presentable. Maybe it's on brand with the company as well, that shows your achievements and the value that you bring to that business, that you always bring and that you're continuing to bring. The additional responsibilities, perhaps you've had a qualification and you've passed a training course that now makes you more valuable to that business because you know professionally and through an accreditation or a qualification how to do certain things, like it might be a CIPD or one of our office management courses, an MBA, or whatever it might be that makes you more valuable to that business as a result. Get all of that ready. Prepare for the meeting, practice in the mirror if you need to on the script of what you're going to say, and best of luck in delivering that request for a salary increase. Can you please now for me, Caroline, share something from your office manager diary, one of these you won't believe it but moments if you have one?
I have a lot, but it's whether they're able to be shared on a podcast. I'd listened to the lovely Megan's podcast before I joined this today, so I had a little bit of a hint that this question might come up. And so I was racking my brain. I think the most unbelievable story that has happened to me as an office manager, and I will be delicate in my telling of this, not at my current company, might I add. Long story short, I'd basically be given 3 weeks to organize a company event in Singapore. And there were 30 people going, and they were from 19 different locations around the world. And it was a week conference. But it was work hard, play harder. So it was, I had to arrange all the flights, all the hotels, all the conference, the meetings, arrange the schedule, etc. But I also had to organize these really, really impressive nights out every night, on the final day, we had a yacht day, for example. We ended up going to quite a few of the locations that were in Crazy Rich Asians. It was a brilliant trip. But prior to this, I'd just come back from holiday. I went to Japan for the Rugby World Cup, which was incredible. And prior to me going, the location for this event still hadn't been decided. I knew it was coming up. We had the date in everyone's diary, but the location still hadn't been decided. So I get back from Japan and I find out it's Singapore. And so I now have 3 weeks. And I'm the only admin person in the entire office. There was 50 of us. And so I was the EA to the top 2 guys, but I was the office manager to look after everyone. So on top of my day job, I had to organize this conference. And so luckily, I was permitted to recruit for a temp just to come on board, not necessarily to help me with Singapore, but to actually try and pick up some of the day-to-day office stuff that was going to fall through the wayside because I was focusing on Singapore. So day 3, and this person was lovely. But day 3, while I'm obviously the busiest I've ever been in my life, I'm still in the office sorry to interrupt, but my CEO is literally calling me. I'm going to put that on divert. There you go. Oh, the life of an EA.
Do you want to take it?
No, it's fine. I'll call him back.
Never stops.
So I'm incredibly busy. I'm working till 3, 4 in the morning, back up at like 6, 7, and also really fighting with the time zone difference in Singapore. They're 7, 8 hours ahead. And so that you're playing constant tag with the individuals in Singapore trying to sort this out. Anyway, on day 3, this lovely individual, and I will repeat that because they really were, but they went MIA during the day. And to be honest, I didn't notice for a while because I was really busy and they weren't sat right next to me. And when they finally came back into the office, it became very apparent that they were incredibly intoxicated and had clearly been off drinking all day. And so I had a very private conversation with them and I just said, look, don't worry about it. Just go home, have a bath, have a rest. No one else knows. I'm the only one that has seen you. Come back in the office tomorrow and we'll start again. And that's what I thought had happened. And so then I go back to my desk, and unfortunately, because this person had gone MIA, I'd set them quite a few tasks that day, including time-sensitive things like we used to send beautiful bespoke birthday cakes to our general managers across the world, and it was one of their birthdays that day. That hadn't happened. So I had to somehow call a bakery in Miami and get a cake to them. So I'm trying to play catch up. And then one of my male colleagues comes back into the office, and this must be at like 8, 9 p.m. at this point, and asks me what color coat that person was wearing. And it turns out they had decided to take a nap in the men's bathroom. I'm just looking
They
at
didn't
Hannah's
go
face
home.
on mute. No, they fell asleep in the men's bathroom. And I had to obviously try and wake them up and get them safely in a taxi. Unfortunately for me and that person, HR ended up stepping in at that point, and it was, the relationship was unfortunately terminated. But it made for a funny story, but at the time, obviously, it was unbelievable because, I mean, that's never happened to me before. It's also a very awkward conversation. This person had come through a recruiter who I know really well, who had placed me at that company and also has placed me at Valesco, and having a really awkward conversation with them about what had happened. And it, unfortunately, it obviously completely left me in the lurch for Singapore. So I'm lucky I got through Singapore, but it's a funny story to tell now, a few years
It
down the line.
is. Do you know what I love? I love the fact that you said to them, "Go home and have a bath." Is that your hack for getting sober?
I just thought, whatever has happened in their day, it's obviously not been a very good day. Something's obviously happened to make them do that. So like, go home, chill. I don't want them to be anxious at all. No one will know. This is our little secret. Come in tomorrow, and I'll pretend it never happened. And yeah, unfortunately, they decided to take a nap in front of a few in the men's
Oh
bathroom.
my goodness. Were they male or female?
Female.
Thank you for sharing.
It is. It's
Caroline.
unbelievable. But it helped me in terms of when I then obviously rung this recruiter, who I've got a very good relationship with. But when I was then applying for jobs and seemingly for Valesco, like, you owe me.
Yeah. Pull that card.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, as you were saying that, it made me think about the amount of people, because I thought we were just going down the they didn't turn up the next day thing and maybe with a twist, but it made me think about the amount of people that we've had in roles, one of which was under me, but in other departments where you go in and you set them all up and you do the induction and you hand them over to the team. And then my receptionist will call me and say, they haven't turned up today, but they'll sometimes have placed bets on whether they think they're going to turn up or not, because they'll see them quite a lot throughout the day, like going to the
Yeah.
bathroom or the toilets, the kitchen or whatever it might be, and they will make a judgment as to whether that person's turning up the next day. And quite a lot of the time, the receptionists tend to
Yeah.
get it right. So yeah, it always used to make me laugh. They're like, they're MIA, as you say. So yeah, love that
It's a
story.
bit of fun though, isn't it?
It is, but also I'm very sorry that it put you under extra stress. But at least you're laughing now.
I know, true. And that person got their birthday cake. So there you go.
Oh,
Win-win.
well, I mean, yeah, I can't believe the breadth of things you had to think about there, but there we are. That is the life of an office manager. So let's go into what you enjoy the most about your role now, please, and why.
Gosh. Again, I think this is a stereotypical answer, but that no 2 days are the same. You're constantly feeling challenged, and especially I think if you're in an environment like Valesco, I think because I'm in an entrepreneurial environment, Shiraz is the founder, and we're still relatively new. There's always something to be done. So I'm very aware that I can put my hand up and just say, do you know what? Actually, I've got an interest in this, this, and this, and I'll be given the rope to do it. So I'm constantly feeling challenged. I think as well on the human side, it's big risk, big reward, but being an office manager or being an assistant or being both, etc., you are often getting a direct window to the most senior person in the company or one of. And as I say, there is big risk because if you mess up, it's the most senior person in the office seeing that. But if you don't and you thrive, you end up having the most unique relationship and access to such influential people in the company. I have such a special relationship with Shiraz, and it means so much to me. But I think if you weren't an assistant or you weren't in an admin or office management role, you probably wouldn't understand it. But I feel very lucky to be given the platform through my role that, I get to have this relationship with our CEO, but also it gives you a very easy opening to everyone in the company. Office managers are often the people as well that, we get to do the fun things like organizing events and giving people treats for Valentine's Day. And, I do payroll, so that makes me extra popular. And so it just means you just get closer to people. And I think it just, especially if you're a people person, I think it's a really lovely role, and it's a lovely way of building relationships and building rapport with your colleagues.
Yeah, it is. We are. some of the only roles that do interact with every level and have that access, like you say, that if you can get that access and build that relationship, you're exposed to all the good things. But yeah, the flip, as you say, if you're not good and you're exposing yourself to the not so great things, so it can be a risk, but it's really rewarding if it pays off, and you get to see the company grow and evolve and all the different things that they're doing strategically to make that happen. So it is good, and
Yeah.
I agree that's a really nice reason to enjoy the office management role in and amongst everything that's crazy that we do about it, including people sleeping in the toilets. So
Again, not at Valesco.
no, repeat, disclaimer. So yeah, so how do you relax and switch off? I mean, you've talked about working some crazy hours, which I know I've been there, 1, 2 a.m. was my average finish time for a long time at JP Morgan and back in at like 9, 9:30 in the morning. How do you make sure that you get time for you and switch off and relax?
I think, as I kind of touched on earlier, I'm not the best at it. Certainly in the last year, though, something that has been pivotal in making me get better and forcing myself out of my comfort zone to actually switch off and relax is Antonella. So our office assistant Antonella, she joined us in March last year, and while I've, as you can tell, I've managed temps before, but Antonella is my first direct report, and I've learned so much. It's been so enjoyable, and I'm so proud of the relationship that the two of us have cultivated. But something that it's really done is it's held a mirror up to me, and how can I tell her to stop working and go home? Because she's got the exact same personality as me, by the way. It's two people pleasers together. How can I say to her with a straight face, right, stop now and go home, please? If I'm not doing it myself, I can't be a hypocrite. That's not my leadership style. I've figured out in the last year or so that I definitely lead by example. And it's, how protective I feel of Antonella, her time, her health, her well-being, but also her development has made me, I think, more cognizant of myself and my own health and well-being. So I've got better at it. But in terms of what do I actually do to relax, I'm big on reality TV. I love having like a really long.
Are you watching Love Island?
I'm not watching Love Island. I'm watching
Oh,
Vanderpump Rules, which I'm really late on, but it has just blown
oh.
my mind. The drama is just phenomenal. So I'm big on that. I live on my own, so I like, which I love. Especially, I think I really love it because as an office manager, you're in the office all day and you've got people coming up to you 24/7 through no fault of their own. But printer's broken, coffee machine doesn't work. Where's the kitchen roll? Like it's constant. And so I think then going home and being able to kind of decompress and being on my own and getting some silent time and just watching some reality TV, I really enjoy. I love the classic. It feels a bit like an interview. You're trying to like. I promise I have hobbies, but I love just going to a beer garden in the summer and having a few ciders with my friends. I really love doing that, having a bit of a boogie. And I go to my parents quite a lot. So they moved out of London probably 5 years ago now. So they live in the countryside, and they've got two beautiful dogs. And I just love going there and kind of really decompressing. Like I'm going there tomorrow. I haven't seen them in a month. I'm so excited. So that's my real relaxation, kind of just cuddling with the dogs. I wish we could have an office dog. Shiraz, if you're listening to this.
You can have mine. She's tiny. She's smaller than a cat. She's
Oh,
used to being in the office as well. I used to take her in every time I did an office move at the weekend. But
oh, bless.
yeah, it is hard to switch off. But when you were saying that about Antonella, it reminded me of a little bit of how I parent my son, in that since he's 4 this weekend, and since I've had him, I've been really conscious of, you know, the 5 different fruit and veg a day and getting a nice balance in his diet and how much exercise we're doing, kind of walking or playing. And you consciously think
Yeah,
about all these things. But then I look at my diet and my exercise and I'm like, it's shocking.
yeah, yeah,
I eat really badly some days and don't have any fruit some days and things like that. And so it's sometimes easier, isn't it, in some ways, to sort of manage someone else's life because you've got that lens on it rather than
yeah,
actually look at your own. And it's a really hard thing to step out of yourself and look at you and what you're doing. But I think when you start to do that and make it habitual, it's a bit easier rather than just kind of
yeah,
dipping in and out. So yeah, it is a challenge, and it is. I love the fact that you mentioned about the sort of mirror shining a mirror on yourself, because that's exactly what things like that can do. When you see people in a negative way as well, when you see people, that you work closely with, or you're close in terms of personal relationships, and you see them just burn out, and you see that mirror looking back at you thinking, oh gosh, I'm working to the same capacity, or I'm doing the similar sort of thing, I've got a similar sort of lifestyle. And it's that moment, isn't it, that helps you to realize. So
Yeah.
that's really important. So can you let me know what you think the most important thing is in office management to maintain? That can be in terms of skills, personality, physical things, virtual things. What do you think is important to maintain?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is something that one of my first managers drilled into me, and that's to always have a solution. So, and I try and also apply that to my personal life, but there's always going to be problems, and especially as an office manager, problems are always going to arise. But it was drummed into me for years that whenever you're presenting a problem to someone, already have the solution in your back pocket to be able to preempt all of those questions that they might have, and just be more solutions driven rather than focusing on the issue at hand. And it helps you, it helps you take things less personally. It helps you, I think it helps you fix things quicker. It just always having that solution, and always, I absolutely love it when I can preempt one of Shaz's questions. I think we've worked together so long now that I think I can often read his mind. He can probably often read mine as well. But it's like a little power moment, isn't it? When you're going with a proposal, and he's about to ask you something, I'm like, scroll down, 3 lines down, I've already answered that. So it's always having a solution, always preempt questions. And I think working on your black book, and again, this can kind of apply to home life as well. As I said, I live on my own, and I bought my first property 2 years ago, and I've really learned the hard way that, you can't rely on a landlord anymore. So when my shower randomly stops working, who do I call? I don't have a black book of a plumber that I trust. And so over the last 2 years, in my personal and my professional life, I've been trying to build that up, which obviously the office management group is phenomenal at, and the network that it provides, and also, the awards as well that I went to a couple of weeks ago, just so that that you've got people to fall back on, and you've got a network to, and the times, and it's often you have to think outside of the box as an office manager. You've always got someone that you can go to. Like an example that came up this week, our company website has, I don't know why, it's blocked on O2 phones. So I'm currently, one of the big projects I'm working on at the moment is rolling out company mobile phones. We've never had them before. And it's a much bigger project than I expected it to be honest. We're at the tail end of it, but we've ended up going with O2. And it's come to my attention that for whatever reason, our company website is blocked, and it's coming up as if it's age restricted. And I obviously know that's not accurate. There's nothing on the website that should be blocked. So obviously I go to our IT partner, and they just said it's nothing to do with us. They didn't do our website. You need to go to O2. It must be a glitch on O2. I've gone to O2. There's nothing they can do. Okay, now what do I do? And I ended up reaching out to, we had a Squarespace expert help us just slightly modernize our people page maybe a month ago. And I ended up just reaching out to him and just said, do you think there's just a glitch in Squarespace that it might be that? And he's come back to me with answers. And so it's just always, I think it's that, the solution is not always the obvious one. So if you're working on your black book and you're building up enough of these networks and these contacts, there's always someone you can go to, and there's always someone you can call.
Totally. And it's those experts and those people at your fingertips in personal life as well. Like you say, like the plumber. Hopefully you found someone now.
I've now got a brilliant plumber. Shout out
Oh,
Stefan.
shout out to all these people today. Yeah, it's so hard. I've got a builder called Richie who comes and does bits for me, but I live on my own bar when my son's here with me, and it's really difficult. I mean, I just had a wasp nest extinguished today because I had a wasp nest in my shed, and it looked like it was going to be massive. It was in a bag. Anyway, they've come out today, and it was actually quite small. It's only about 30, 40 wasps, but they can hold 10,000 at their peak.
Mm.
Yeah, so I'm glad I got to that early, but it's all these things that you have to do in and
Yeah.
out of the office, that, yeah, very, very important to, like you say, maintain that network, and also that having the solution alongside the problem, because you go to your manager with just a problem, it's not particularly helpful for them. So trying to be much more proactive and using initiative to present problem and solution or solution options is really key. So I really, really like that advice.
I've actually got one other tip. Sorry, I think it's quite a worthy one of saying, is not to be afraid to say no or to push back. I think
Mm.
very common in our industry, especially if you're doing your job really well, people are going to rely on you to do certain things, and they might, they might push the boundaries a little bit and ask you to do things that they could certainly do themselves, or there's a lot of that. I think don't be afraid to, build up that confidence and build up that it's self-worth to actually, professionally so, but push back and say no, and also say when you don't agree with something. You don't always have to get your way, and you're not always going to be right. But if you fundamentally think something, it's the wrong decision, that's the wrong supplier to go with, or that's the wrong software solution. I've actually gone out to the market and I've spoken to 15 of them. I think that's the wrong decision. Say it and don't be afraid to.
Yeah, and people may turn around and say, that's the decision done. It's, thanks for your input, but no thanks kind of thing. But yeah, it's so important to voice that. So to finish off then, where is your career heading? What is in the future for you, Caroline?
I think the easy answer to this is I want to be number one in terms of operations, whether that's COO, whether that's chief of staff, which is obviously a new title that, that's getting a lot of attraction at the moment. I've made it very clear from day one at Valesco that that's the goal. And so Valesco and Shiraz and have been, working together to kind of, how do we get me there? It's not something that's going to happen tomorrow, but that is the ultimate goal. In terms of how I get there, I've got to the point now, and I hope it doesn't sound arrogant to say, but I'm very good at my job and I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing as an office manager, and I'm sure there's always going to be, new fires to fight that I haven't fought before, but I know I can do it. The element that I'm missing, because I'm still relatively young, or I like to feel that I'm relatively young, is, I don't have the experience or the wisdom to be able to look far ahead. I've never been at a company at its early stages and watched it grow to 100 people. So I can't at this stage significantly influence strategy, which is obviously a key piece that you need to be able to do to be chief of staff or COO. So that's something that I'm definitely turning my focus to. I had a brilliant review this year for 2023 with the board of directors it was absolutely glowing, and I was incredibly grateful for it. I was also very, very lucky enough to be the winner of Hybrid Office Manager of the Year a couple of weeks ago at the wonderful Office Management Awards. And if anyone is listening, by the way, please enter them. It was just the most incredible night. And I think it was 2-3 weeks ago now, and I am still absolutely on cloud nine about it. Like, as soon as I got that award, I thought, right, what next? What next do I need to do in my career that means that I can be worthy of applying to this time next year, and worthy of potentially being on this stage next year? So yeah, I'm turning my sights now to trying to be a little bit more strategic. What kind of qualifications do I need to get under my belt? Do I need to do, is it an MBA or a mini MBA like Your Excellency does? Or do I need to upskill myself? Do I need an actual HR qualification that I don't currently have? Or do I actually need to go more down, because I want to be COO of Valesco, do I actually need to go more down a financial route and kind of understand basic investment fundamentals? That's where my head's at now, while also maintaining, the day-to-day office manager, operations manager role. But I want to get to a point where I can sit at the table with C-suite and input in strategy and impact growth. I think admins in general, I think, can unfortunately sometimes be overlooked, and their impact can be undermined because we're not revenue generating. But I passionately feel that without us, those who are revenue generating wouldn't be able to be. We enable you to be the best person you are. And so while you can't quantify the impact and, quite frankly, the profit that you bring to a company, it's there. And so I want to get to a point where I can make that actually more quantifiable.
Yeah, and COO is such a lovely transition, I think, from operations office manager, facilities manager, if the facilities manager role isn't strictly facilities, because some have that title and actually there are more office management role and remit based. But the COO role was definitely the one that I had my sights on before I set the business up, because it just has so much variety, and it's still that day-to-day thing where you are potentially still overseeing the operations office management side, the HR side, the finance side, compliance, legal, tech. There'll be, pay accounts payable, receivable, payroll. There'll be so many different elements, potentially marketing and PR and client services, customer services, they all typically sit under the COO type banner. So yeah, it still has that flavor and that variety that we seek as office managers, and which is why we're drawn to these kind of roles. And I don't think it's arrogant, can I just say, to say that you're good at your job, and you now have an award to confirm and validate that, but also things like your amazing appraisals and the fact that you've got this support and the backing of your executives to try and get you to that position, speaks volumes. I had to be arrogant in order to set this business up.
Yeah.
There was no way that I could
Yeah.
do all of the things that I've done over the last 7 years if there wasn't a degree of me backing myself. And as much
Yeah.
as I've had imposter syndrome and doubt over the years as to whether I can do it, and I still get it sometimes, especially when you're feeling low and you're burnt out and things like that. I've had it an awful lot over the last couple of weeks, and it's starting to come back up again, my confidence in myself and what I can do. But we all get it where you have those fluctuations, but I think it's so important when you know you are good at something, when you know you're a good office manager, to really hold that close to your heart. And to, I think I talked about it on a podcast. It might have been with the one with Steph, actually. um, and it was where one of my coaches had said to me, what evidence do you have that you're not good? What evidence do you have that you can't do it? Well, actually, all the
Yeah.
evidence, particularly with you, is saying that you are good. So I don't think it's arrogant at all.
Well, thank you. And likewise, I think you're absolutely phenomenal. What you do, there's nothing else like the office management group out there. They're starting to become more
I
EA.
haven't paid her.
They're starting to become more EA/PA networks, and they're all fantastic, by the way. But the niche with being an office management group is just so helpful, and the network. And I was on the phone last week it was a reference for a contractor that we're thinking of hiring, and she's kind of my counterpart at her company in operations. And she was asking me something, and I just said, "Have you heard of the office management group?" She said, "No, what's that?" And I was explaining what it was, and she was even Googling it on the phone. She said, "Oh my goodness." So thank you. Yeah, and
That's why
thank
we called
you.
it the OMG as well.
That's true. That's true.
I like it. Oh, honestly, it's a pleasure. It's my pleasure. And I am going to now say thank you very much to you for your time and for being I really loved chatting and getting to know you much more, Caroline. So thank you for
Thank you,
sharing your
Hannah.
stories and you won't believe it, but that's another classic at the top of my favorites list. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all the lovely listeners who've lasted this long.
You got to the end. Well done. You're still here. No, I think there's been some great tips in there. So thank you. And I will see you very soon.
Thanks, Hannah.
This episode is sponsored by the Office Management Portal, our free online membership platform aimed at connecting, supporting, and empowering office managers in a simple to use, all-in-one self-service resource. You can sign up right now at www.theofficemanagementportal.com and click the sign up button in the top right. If you want to upgrade your account to our premium membership at any time for unlimited downloadable templates and monthly expert masterclasses, use the code THEOMD for 25% off. That's THEOMD for Office Manager Diaries for 25% off. Thank you for listening.